All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're deconstructing a visual narrative that literally pushes the boundaries of what we think the human body, and honestly the human mind, can actually endure. We are looking at the ultimate survival nightmare. It's a story packed with catastrophic injury, impossible odds, and just raw, unfiltered willpower. If you've ever found yourself wondering exactly how far someone can go when absolutely everything goes wrong, well, you're in the right place.
Just take a second to really absorb this. What we've got here is a deeply harrowing tale of survival captured in one single static frame. You've got the intense, dirt-caked face of a man dragging himself forward. He looks utterly broken, right? But at the same time, violently determined. And it's not just him. Looming in the dark background right behind him is the massive silhouette of a bear. It immediately sets this deeply unsettling tone and just throws us right into a life-or-death struggle.
And then there's the text. Tucked up at the top, it says, "Buried alive." I mean, just let that sink in for a second. The sheer terror of suffocation, the claustrophobia, the absolute pitch-black darkness of being trapped under the earth, likely left for dead after a massive attack. That one phrase completely changes what we're looking at. This isn't just a guy crawling away from an animal. This is a man who has literally already returned from the grave.
As if being buried alive wasn't terrifying enough, we see this staggering claim at the bottom. Crawled 300 kilometers. That's roughly 186 miles. To put that into perspective, that's like dragging yourself between two major cities, dragging a broken, bleeding body through the unforgiving wilderness. It establishes these physical stakes that seem completely impossible, and it immediately forces us to ask, how could anyone physically achieve this?
So we're essentially looking at a grim, chronological timeline unfolding in a single frame. At 0 seconds, the catastrophic catalyst, the bear encounter. Fast forward maybe an hour, and we have the horrific aftermath, where he's left for dead and buried, whether by the elements or the predator caching its prey. And finally, the agonizing escape, a crawl that would easily take upwards of 14 days, if not longer, given the distance and his state. This timeline totally bridges the gap between the initial attack and the incredibly slow escape we're witnessing.
Section 1. The lurking threat, the apex predator.
If you look past the man in the foreground, deep into that dark background, there it is, a massive, shadowed bear looming directly behind him. You can just barely make out its snout and its bared teeth merging from the dark forest. It represents this sudden, overwhelming violence. The bear is deliberately kept shrouded in darkness to emphasize that it's not just an animal, it's a looming, omnipresent threat. It's the pure chaos that kicked off this entire nightmare.
This bear is the initial catastrophic event. It taps into that primal fear we all kind of have in the back of our minds when we step out into the untamed wilderness, right? The apex predator. Truly grasping the sheer power and devastation of a bear attack is absolutely crucial to understanding why this man's current state is so desperate. He didn't just wander off the trail and get lost. He was violently dismantled by a sheer force of nature before his journey even started.
Section 2. The grave, buried alive. Circling back to those terrifying words, buried alive. The bear was this active, violent threat, but buried alive? That's a passive, suffocating horror. It's the ultimate claustrophobia. Just imagine the psychological terror of waking up in the dark, crushed by the weight of the earth, and realizing you've been left there to die. That is a mental hurdle I think most people would never, ever be able to overcome.
And you can literally see the physical evidence of that grave right on him. I mean, look closely at his head and shoulders. His hair is completely matted with soil. Thick, dark dirt is just caked onto his skin, ground deep into the pores of his face and arms. You can see blood soaking through his torn shirt, mixed with the dirt. He honestly looks like a corpse that somehow willed itself back to life and clawed its way to the surface.
Escaping the crushing earth. We really have to pause and just appreciate the immense mental and physical fortitude this would take. His body was already destroyed from the bear attack, his oxygen was running out, and yet, somehow, he found the sheer willpower to dig himself out with his bare hands. And the craziest part? Surviving the grave was merely the prologue. The actual journey hadn't even begun.
Section 3. The distance, 300 kilometers.
300. Let's just single out that staggering number for a second. 300 kilometers. When we talk about human endurance, we're usually talking about, running marathons, or maybe an ultramarathon if you're an elite athlete. But this is 300 kilometers of dragging dead weight. By isolating this number, we really emphasize the incomprehensible scale of his journey. It turns this from a standard survival story into an almost mythical feat of human endurance. So, the crucial question here is, how on earth do you survive a 300-kilometer crawl? Biologically, logistically, how is that even possible? We are talking about a body that is severely traumatized, losing blood, completely deprived of food and clean water, and exposed to freezing elements. The physical impossibility of dragging a broken body that far means survival at this point isn't about physical fitness anymore. It is entirely about a psychological refusal to die.
Just look at exactly how agonizing this is, specifically his hands at the very bottom. They are completely bare. They're caked in dark mud and blood, and they're sinking deep into the freezing, wet snow right next to those sharp, dark twigs. Every single time he pulls himself forward, he's plunging his bare skin into freezing conditions. The massive risk of frostbite, infection, and total muscle failure is represented right there in those hands.
So when we bring all these visual cues together, we get this ultimate sensory nightmare. The bare, freezing hands digging into the ice. The torn, blood-stained shirt showing exposure and injury. The matted, dirt-caked hair proving he emerged from the earth itself. The intense, agonizing glare of a man operating entirely on pure adrenaline and instinct. And finally, that unforgiving snowy terrain that promises zero comfort and absolutely no easy path. It combines the cold, the physical destruction, and the relentless environment into one cohesive picture of extreme exhaustion.
Section 4. The Will to Survive.
He is literally staring down impossible odds. This whole setup masterfully balances three primal fears: the active terror of the predator, the passive claustrophobic terror of the grave, and the agonizing slow burn terror of unending exhaustion. And yet, what anchors this entire thing? It's his eyes. That intense, unbroken stare directly at us. He isn't looking back at the bear. He isn't looking down at the snow. He's looking forward. It is the ultimate visual representation of absolute defiance.
Which leaves us with this final lingering question. What actually are the absolute limits of human endurance? When your body is completely broken, when the predators are lurking right behind you, and when the elements themselves are actively trying to bury you, what is it that keeps the human spirit moving forward? As you look into the eyes of the survivor, ask yourself what you would truly be capable of if you ever found yourself face to face with the ultimate nightmare. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and keep exploring those fascinating details.